Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hustle AI podcast. I'm your host, Jitin. And here on this pod, mostly we talk about the topics and the latest events unfolding in the world of AI. This includes new announcements, product launches, book events, and some groundbreaking technology that we keep hearing every other week. Today, I have with me a friend of mine, Altaf Rehmani, who has written a new book called Generative AI for Everyone. This book is available on Amazon and the ebook on Kindle. Altaf leads digital solutions and automation at HSBC, and he is based in Hong Kong. He's also a speaker at O'Reilly, lecturer at CTO Academy, and runs a couple of AI courses in Maven.com. He's a perfect person who can help understand these topics well, especially from an enterprise context, which is personally my interest in this whole AI space. So, we will deep dive in understanding more about this book, the space, and how everyone should be preparing for the coming wave. So, without wasting time, let's deep dive.
Okay, thank you, Jitin. Hi, my name is Altaf Rehmani, and I'm currently the Digital Solutions and Automation Lead at HSBC. I've been doing AI for the last 8 years. I've been looking at how digital can help businesses transform. And really, I'm into the business of change and transformation. I've worked with large enterprises in the past, and I've also spent almost a decade with startups running my own companies, raising funds, and I sold my last company. I also done a couple of years of angel investment. Now, generative AI is a breakthrough technology. I feel it's going to have an impact on the way we work in the future. It's going to have an impact on every profession that we can think of. So I think it's one of those groundbreaking technologies, just like cloud or the advent of the internet or the advent of the smartphone. So really excited to learn about generative AI. And too many things are happening. It's a real challenge to keep up with all the recent events. And two is bringing it out to the professionals and the masses, right? Just creating that awareness amongst people that yes, this is coming, this is important, this is going to impact the way we work in the future. I think that's the real goal, that's the real driver. I'm passionate about educating people, sharing with them what I know, what I have learned. And it's really important, I think, for people to realize before it's too late that AI is here to master, and it's a skill that each one of us should be familiar with, should be comfortable with. Just as now we are comfortable with smartphone, we are comfortable with using Google Maps, we are comfortable talking about the cloud, and now all the enterprises have cloud usage. So this is one of those technologies which is just going to be everywhere, em- embedded in our day-to-day workflows as we know it. So very important to master, understand what it is, master the fundamentals, and also get a grip and understanding on how it's going to impact your work, your profession, what you do today.
Awesome.
And that's the real motivation behind writing the book.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Okay. So, who should be reading this book? Who's the targeted audience here? And I'll just to give you a little bit more context here. When it comes to AI, there is like so much of resources out there, right? I mean, like a lot of good documentation out there. There are some resource which will allow developers to get started, something which will allow people to just fiddle around and like draw cool looking images and whatnot. So, where exactly does your book fit in?
Yeah. So the book is meant to be a broad introduction to a variety of topics within the generative AI space. So the idea was there's just such a lot of information, and the information comes to you in pockets. You've seen something on email, you've watched a couple of videos on YouTube, you hear your friends talking about ChatGPT and other tools, and it's just coming in randomly from different sources. And the whole idea was one, to put a structure around all the topics within generative AI, and really target this at people who are non-technical to begin with, or maybe they are technical, but they are just at a very high level, right? So that for everyone in the book is meant to state that it's a general audience that I'm targeting, especially people from different professions, non-technical professions, who may be new to AI, who may have not realized. Actually, you're not new to AI. If you use email, if you watch Netflix, AI is all around us, right? But people don't realize that. And it's just to create that awareness and bring those people from different professions, give them an overview, make them aware of the tools and technologies out there, and most importantly, in the enterprise, right? So enterprises are more challenging. How do you use this safely, securely? How do you have the governance around it? So there's this broad area called responsible AI. How do we approach responsible AI? More importantly, what do you as leaders, what do leaders at enterprises need to be prepared for, and how do they prepare for it, and what should be their mindset? So there are some guidance around that. And of course, this is all my views along with some of the experts in the industry. So it's all compiled and synthesized in a way which is easy to understand. And so it's basically a curation of all the topics within the generative AI
Interesting.
space.
Very interesting. Okay. That's good to know, and I'm excited to deep dive into it. Now, like,
Okay.
okay, I don't know exactly where exactly to start, but like, let's start from the very basics. Okay, so for the audience, if you were to talk about AI, like, let's cover that, like, let's start with the basics topics that everyone is aware of, like LLMs, prompts, and tokens. What exactly those are, right? So maybe you could, like, give us a high level view of what this book is about, and what are the main concepts that book is addressing. And after that, maybe we will get into more specific topics, or like how AI is important in certain industries, or how enterprises should be looking at it, right? So we could branch off onto those topics.
Right. Okay, thanks. So yeah, so AI is really a broad field. It's been existent. It has existed for the past 5 or 6 decades, right? So AI has been around for a long time. It had its own periods of winter, what we call as winter, where nothing much happened, not much progress happened. But today, it's really the culmination of data, compute, storage, and algorithms, which is causing this uh, exponential growth in the capability of what AI can do. Right. So fundamentally, AI is a broad field which tries to uh, imbibe human capabilities in machines. Right. So just everything that a human can do, can you make a machine do it? Right. And that's the overarching goal of AI. And you can even go one step further. Can machines become more intelligent than humans and can do more than what humans can do? So that's the overarching goal. But within this space, now with the advent of generative AI, you've got AI's capability to generate new content on the fly. And when we talk about content, we are talking about understanding language and generating new text. This could be write ups, articles, business plans, anything which is text related, images, videos, business plans, brainstorming ideas. You think about it, AI, generative AI has the ability to do that, right?
Yeah.
So previous to this, AI was more focused on predicting and classifying and detecting and telling you what, basically
Yeah.
predicting. Um, so now with generative AI, because you have the ability to create new things or things which do not exist on the internet. Now this is possible because the AI is trained on vast amounts of data. So, for example, when it comes to natural language, it's seen maybe trillions of words and sentences, and it's understood the nuances of words and how these words occur, what is the probability distribution, etc. So it has understood language so well that it can actually now produce new text on its own. And that's the beauty about this. Inherently, it's just a next word predictor, which has been refined with a few techniques. And that's why you see some of the answers coming out
Yeah.
from these language models are so cohesive and so human-like that it just took 5 days to get something like ChatGPT 1 million
Yep. Yep.
users.
Yep.
So
And
the other thing which has happened is generative AI is now in the hands of
yeah.
consumers, right? So before this, generative AI was used in research companies, large organizations, but now it's in the hand of consumers. And you see people just using their creativity, doing a lot of things and applying it in different areas. So that's the language model side of things.
Yeah, I think the
And then
one
there
thing
is
that you
the
mentioned, this was very interesting. I like AI is not new. It has always been there. I mean, at least
yeah,
for the last 5 to 10 years, maybe more. But that was
yes,
mostly limited to the prediction part of it, right? I mean, if I'm on YouTube,
correct,
what's the next video that I should watch, or my Netflix predictions, or even on Google search, like those
absolutely.
things, it was limited to that. But now it this has improved on this prediction part. It is moving on to the generative part, which is where it is able to generate and like produce content which is more cohesive, either with the questions that I'm seeking answers to, or like expanding on my work or things of such nature, right? So that's okay. This is interesting. This is what I believe OpenAI like showed the world, right? In late 2022 or something, when they the GPT-3 models came out, that's when people started taking a look. Hey, okay, this is possible, right? Okay, that's interesting.
Correct.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and see, and one of the things that you have to give credit to OpenAI, because Chat GPT, you have to think of it as a product. It's not a
Yeah,
model. It's a product which has got a model behind it, and it's got also a lot of couple of
yeah,
layers, right? The way it was trained, it was
yeah,
different because they've taken some other techniques from the AI world, like reinforcement learning, and introduced it on a language model. So that was the innovative part, right? So they used reinforcement learning on language modeling, and they also had some safety layers built on top of that. And remember, one of the things, because if you're only going to predict next
yeah,
words, and if you can only create a model which is good at that, it cannot really follow instructions. But you see, these new language models are capable of following instructions. And that's where the other layer of instruction tuning comes in, right? So the model has seen in their training data not only text from the internet, but also custom data sets, which are simply instructions and the responses to those
yeah,
instructions. So there is a multi-layered training approach, right? So at the very base, they've just seen a lot of data, which is on the internet. On top of that, they've seen tens of thousands of instructions and what is the best way to respond to those instructions. And then they got human feedback, ranking some of these responses and actually telling you what good looks like, right? And if you do this over a lot of data iteratively, the model learns one, it learns language. And when we say language, it includes
yeah.
code. It learns how to follow instructions. And then it also knows what good looks like and what a good response
Makes
looks like.
sense.
So if you combine the three, that's where the magic of these new models come into.
Interesting. Like for the next topic, I mean, like I want to get into something more specific, as in like everyone knows the terms, right? People have heard of LLMs, prompts. I guess most of the people like know what those things mean. But still, like maybe for a new set of audience who are still just dabbling in AI or things of such nature, let's just like go over some of the terms that we often come across on internet. What are LLMs, prompts, RAG, and token limit, or what does token limitations mean? If you could just expand on some of these items.
Yeah, so language models are nothing but, you can call them computational systems, which are designed to understand, generate, and produce new text, right? But in essence, at the very base, a language model is simply a next word or a next token predictor, right? So language models have existed in the past in smaller shapes and forms. For example, when you use when you try to respond to a Gmail, when you try to respond to an email within Gmail, it will actually preempt what the response should be. Or when you're typing on your smartphone, it will try to predict what the next word potentially you're trying to type based on the words which have come before. So language models at its base essence are next word predictors. But then you do some special fine tuning uh, training on them to make sure that they understand how to generate these tokens in order to respond to instructions. You also train the language models with special techniques, which train them on, which train them on what is the best word which comes after the previous
Yeah,
words. And really, human responses are incorporated. So you give a lot of human feedback back into the models, and that's how you make these language models more sort of cohesive and coherent in terms of
Makes
responding,
sense.
right?
And
Now,
just to add
yeah,
here, I believe, like, at least, like, we will be expanding on this like bit later today. But
okay.
for the most part, like when it comes to using LLMs for any application, like even if we were to limit this to a fine tuning of the existing models, that should be sufficient, right? Fine tuning means like where we are like asking the LLM or this models to kind of generate the answers in a certain context or a way which is more applicable to my application, right? For the most part, I believe for the most applications, they everyone need not concern themselves with training a model from ground up, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's go back to large language models, right? So in the previous response, I explained what are language models, right? Large language models are simply advanced language models which are trained on internet scale data. So that's the first thing, right? That the scale of the data which the language model has been trained on, that classifies it as large, which means there have a large number of parameters, which means there have a large number of parameters that help them learn the nuances of the
Yeah.
language. So that's number one. Then on top of that, they have something what we call as instruction tuning. They know how to follow instructions and how to respond to those instructions. Again, generating one token or one word
Yeah.
at a time. And then on top of that, they also have reinforcement learning. They know what good looks like, right? So if you combine all of that, that makes large language models really powerful.
Hmm. Okay. And like there is something which like people keep throwing out like these days with which is RAG or RAG, as it is popularly like known as. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So let's talk about two things, right? Let's talk about fine tuning a model, and let's talk about RAG, right? So and let's look at the two in separation. Fine tuning is the art of teaching a language model a task which it was not originally trained for, right? So in your pre-training or in your foundational model, it has been trained on certain things. It has been trained, let's say, to follow instructions, predict the next word. It knows what good looks like. But let's say you have a specific task which the language model has never been trained on. So let's say, let's pick up, let's say you're doing recipes, right? And you're doing very specific recipes from a certain area, let's say in South India.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm just picking up an example. And you want to rank these recipes, right? Now the language model doesn't know how to rank these recipes, right? So, because it has never been trained on doing that specific task. So, if you have a specialized task and if you want the language model to do that, then maybe you can show it some more data sets with your own specific um, uh, predictions that you want the language model to do, and you train it, and then the language model. So, that at that particular point, you can use fine tuning, right? But fine tuning, again, based on the depending on the language model, could be something that it will require effort. So you need to collect the data. You need to ensure that the large language model allows fine tuning, use the API and fine tune a model. So it's not very expensive, but it is something that which takes effort,
Hmm.
and the results vary. You have to experiment with fine tuning a large language model. On the other hand, RAG or retrieval augmented generation works slightly differently. What RAG says is, I'm going to give you the response. Hey, language model, I'm going to give you the question and the answer. So it's like an open book question
Hmm.
answering. But you just help me formulate the answer in a very cohesive and natural form based on what my user or what the prompt is asking you to do, right? So the language model comes into play only at the last mile. But when within RAG, you actually search and get the answer directly from a different system,
Right.
right? So it's retrieval. The retrieval in RAG stands for you're already retrieving the
Yeah.
answer from somewhere, right? Now, this could be a vector database. This could be any other search engine that you
Yeah.
have. And then you augment that. You augment the LLM with this response. So you retrieve the response, the potential response to the prompt, and you give it to the language model and you say, hey, language model, can you just tidy this up? Can you just make this simpler based on the prompt? So, for example, I can feed it my own private
Yeah.
document I can ingest it in a vector store, and from the vector store, I can retrieve the answers, convert them into embeddings, and send all the embeddings to the language models so that they can formulate a cohesive answer.
Makes sense.
So that's RAG for you. RAG gets the context or gets the answer, just has to package it together. Whereas fine tuning really helps your model do new
Makes
tasks.
sense. Makes sense. Okay. I guess this also helps us to like wade into the next topic, which is on where exactly does AI fit into enterprises, or how AI enterprises should look at using AI. Okay. And I believe this is where RAG plays a very important role, right? Because today, the popular LLMs, most likely the GPT-4 or 4.5, is one of those models which are gonna come out, and even the other popular open source models, right? Like Llama, like Google recently released their Gemini model, so Gemma, if I'm remembering the name correctly. You could of course train them and get them to do a certain task, but when it comes to corporations or enterprises, they cannot use the general LLM, because there's a lot of data which is just private to enterprises, right? Like that data is not yet been made available, and by default that LLM doesn't have any context or any window, or what exactly goes on these enterprises, right? And this is where like with concepts like RAG, if you could empower an LLM to look into the existing data set. Hey, this is your, like, for example, this is a bank which has thousands of data generated. Why don't you look at this and help me come up with results which is more relevant for me? I believe this is where this the perfect combination, the potent combination of RAG and LLMs comes in, and will help us to scale enterprise applications at a much better level, right? What do you think about this?
Yeah, so I think RAG will be useful because enterprises have their own private
Mhm.
data and they want to search through this data. So the RAG technique of ingesting the data into suitable databases and then retrieving results from that. I think if you look at large enterprises, there's a vast knowledge repository in every department,
Yeah.
right? So whether it's HR or whether it's your technology department, whether it's product documentation, whether it's customer related customer service queries, there's so many of these areas which require knowledge bases. So think of vast knowledge bases which can be searched extremely
Yeah.
quickly and able to produce coherent responses. Not necessarily the way it's been formulated in the knowledge base, but in a way which is more suitable for the task at hand,
Yeah.
right? So if it's a customer service and I'm reading a manual and the customer is asking me something on the phone, I can't necessarily get the answer from the
Yeah.
manual, but the LLM helps me formulate the answer I should be responding to the customer service based on what's in the manual,
Mhm.
right? So it's really useful for large enterprises because they just have a lot of data. It helps you do this information synthesis, right? Search through the data, produce something cohesive, summarize things for you, shows things in bullet points, explain things in a simple manner. I mean, all these things. Ultimately, it's faster access to information, um, improves understanding, and improves the processes. And overall, I think these are all productivity gains, right? So
Yeah.
I classify most of these under the umbrella of productivity gains. It's going to make each of the employees very, very productive
Yeah.
because now they can do their jobs much
Yep.
faster,
Yep. That hundred
right? So
percent
this is
makes
one
sense. Yeah.
space. Yeah, this is one space, and the other space this can help later on with more advanced LLM capabilities is automation.
Hmm. Yeah.
So once you have, because large language models have this emergent capability, and again, it's not 100% perfect. These are
Yeah.
very early days, wherein what researchers found that they got some capabilities which they were not originally trained for,
Hmm.
right? So they're trained for doing certain things, but they also seem to be good, for example, in reasoning, right? Now, if you could have reasoning, a language model reason, think about a higher level objective. If you could give it to the language model and the language model then figures out how to break this objective into tasks and how to then execute each one of these tasks. And this is a very exciting space with language
Yeah.
models. Some of them are called agents. It's called agents, essentially software orchestrator, which uses language models and then simply has the ability to execute
Yeah.
code.
Actually, that was my next
And
topic,
I
like,
hope,
agents versus
ah,
co-pilots, like, what the differences and so on. But before we, like, leave this topic around, sticking to the same thing, how enterprises should look at using LLMs into their workflows and so on. Now, like, there are like these are the two steps, right? How, like, what any enterprise has at today's age at their disposal. One, um, they could take an open source LLM out there and then, like, train it with their existing data. I mean, that means you're buying more NVIDIA chips, or you're fighting for whatever, the rare, the the GPU training resources and so on, right? So that's one option. And
yeah,
again, like, the reason for this would be maybe because you want more privacy. You don't want to use a generic, a publicly trained LLM model, like, say, like GPT-4, or maybe the maybe the llamas or something of like such nature, right? Versus the other option is you use an public LLM, like GPT-4. Sorry, I mean, I shouldn't say the public LLM, but a LLM trained on public data, which is GPT-4. And if you could use a good quality RAG, workflow or a pipeline, which is plugged into this, like this LLM, do you think that would help address this concern? Like, so if today, if enterprise leaders were to make a decision versus training an existing model versus using an existing model with RAG, like, what would you suggest here?
yeah. So I think one should always start with um, looking at what's out there. I think training a model from scratch is an expensive
Hmm.
proposition. So it's best to utilize foundation models or pre-trained models which already exist, right? But the question is, you don't want to use public models, right? So the model which is out there in the public, consumers using it. What is happening is OpenAI has partnered with Microsoft and other companies, and these companies are providing what is called as private instances of these large language
Yeah.
models to enterprise. And that's been provided in a secure cloud environment where only the enterprise would have access to the capabilities of the large language model, which means no one else can actually access these language models except for the employees, the authorized employees of that enterprise. So I think even Google is going down the same path, and all the cloud providers provide access to large language models on the cloud and provide private instances. So these are special instances made available for enterprises, right? So they're not using the public model
Yeah.
anymore. They're using their own private instance, and of course, they're paying for
Yeah.
it. They're paying per token. So that's one. Number two, there are organizations out there who are specializing in on-prem deployment of large language models in enterprises. So companies like Cohere, they specialize in doing this. They give you LLMs to make sure that you have the infrastructure on-prem or on cloud. So they give you the choice to do
Hmm.
that. And then thirdly, there are open source models, right? So you can take an open source model. You still have to figure out the infrastructure and how you're going to do the inferencing, how you're going to manage the scaling. So there's a lot of ML ops if you try to do it on your own. So most enterprises, I would advise to begin with, you should always look at private instances of large language
Yeah.
models, which are hosted. Yes, you should use them securely. You should have a governance framework around what is being used and what data has been sent to these models. But then start with that because that's quick to do your POCs and prove the business benefit before you start mixing it with other models. So I don't think the future will be just one
Hmm.
model, one large language model, right? Enterprises already have a lot of AI models, smaller AI models, which they have been producing in the past, right? Models which can do prediction, which can do classification, which can work on their data. So I think in the future, what looks like is a combination of these small models and large models working together with some orchestration layer on top, deciding what models to use for what purpose.
Makes sense.
I don't think we'll just have one LLM satisfying all the needs of an organization because organizations and large enterprises have complex
Yeah.
needs. And as we said, right, this is all very new. The whole orchestration space, agent space is very, very new. The reasoning capabilities of large language models are emergent, which means they were not taught for reasoning,
Hmm.
right? So I'm sure it's not perfect. It's like, yes, 20, 30% there. And there will be advances made in this space. And that will, I think, apart from productivity, I think automation is one big space
Makes
where
sense.
these can bring in a lot of
Makes sense.
gains.
And, like, just this just for the, the listeners' benefit. So today, if you were to use let's say, take an example of GPT-4. If you were to build any application with GPT-4, Azure allows us to host a private instance of GPT-4, like which only
Yeah.
like your org will have access to it. This is not a public like model or public instance which is available to anyone else. And the benefit of this is that like whatever data is hitting that LLM, that data never leaves the like that environment. So especially if you as an
Yeah.
enterprise are concerned about like whether your data would be leaked or whether your data would be used to train a certain model, as long as you're using an instance which is privately hosted on Azure, you are good to go. So okay, anyways, that was a
Right.
small tangent for the benefit of the listeners. um,
No, no, it's good because I think it makes sense. See, enterprises are already trusting players like
mhm,
Microsoft,
yeah,
AWS, Google. If you think about Microsoft, right? So Microsoft 365 is used in majority of the enterprises, which means their data, their emails, their team chats, their documents are already in a
yeah,
cloud environment. And that cloud environment is secured either through virtual private networks or other networking boundaries, right? So wherein you have a networking boundary wherein only that enterprise can particularly go in and access the data. There are techniques in which, or there are ways through which you can make enterprises access data on the cloud, which is exclusively theirs.
makes sense, makes sense. Okay. Like on the last topic, you mentioned a very interesting word like automation, right? Like the natural step for enterprises is to wade into automation, right? Because that's where most of the productivity gains gets unlocked. So there are two main things, right? Like two main words people hear often. One is agents, and the second is co-pilots. And from what I understand, like right now, what many companies are promoting or highlighting is like starting off with co-pilots, which are basically tools which would allow you to uh, supplement your existing functions, right? So if I'm a business analyst at a company, maybe if there is a co-pilot which is helping me do XYZ, then maybe let's say if I'm able to work on one project once a week, co-pilots might allow me to work on five projects at the same time, right? And after this, the next evolutionary stage to this is agents, which is where it might be able to do more, maybe 10, 20 projects at the same time. So could you expand on this, co-pilots versus agents? What are the main differences? And if at all, even in your day-to-day life, if you are using any co-pilots as of now, if you could mention that, that would be helpful as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I think co-pilot and agents, in my view, are very similar. Okay. So you can think of Copilot as AI
Hmm.
assistants, right? So if you think of Copilot as AI generic, so that there are two definitions. Copilot is also a product name from Microsoft family of AI assistants. Microsoft is calling their AI assistants Copilots. Okay. So that's one brand name that they have taken that name Copilot. And if you take Copilot in the real sense, it's somebody who's assisting you in the context of AI. It's an AI assistant, right? Now, what's an AI assistant? And an AI assistant is a piece of software which actually does orchestration, which you give it a prompt and it figures out what to do with the prompt, right? So maybe it's going in and doing some search. It's then calling a language model. It's then doing the search back again. It's calling the language model to formulate the answer, and then it's returning the answer back to you, right?
Yeah.
Agent is simply an extension of that, right? Agent has access to, you can give an agent access to literally anything you want. It could be an API, it could be access to a database, it could be access to a Python environment to execute code, or it could be any document ingested into a vector database. So you can add tools, what we call as tools, to an agent, which is nothing but a piece of software. And you can also give the agent memory, which means the agent can actually now remember what you have been asking it, and the response is coming out.
Hmm.
So then the agent builds up something like a memory. So in essence, if you combine a software orchestrator with the capabilities of a language model, the ability to call APIs or access databases, and the ability to execute code, and in addition have a memory of what's going on, then you get something called as an agent. So in essence, an agent allows you to perform tasks, right? So going beyond simply responding to a prompt, now you're actually able to execute
Yeah.
things. Now, what is an agent able to execute depends on the creator of the agent. Uh, what what tools has the creator of the agent provisioned the agent to use, right? So I could create an agent and give it access to, let's say, use Zapier to do some automation for
Yeah.
me. Or I could create an agent and give it access to an API to call in Microsoft 365. So agents are really powerful, and I think they'll really impact how automation happens in the future. If you look at the Microsoft Copilot product, and if you look at the documentation that Microsoft has, I think it'll become very, very clear.
Hmm.
Copilot from Microsoft is nothing but a AI agent. Okay, it's an AI orchestrator software which listens to all the prompts that the user is prompting, and then goes to the relevant source to find the answer. So if it's a Microsoft 365 Copilot AI assistant, it's going to go to the Microsoft Graph, because that's where all the data about your M365 is stored for you as a user, right? So all your team chats, all your SharePoint documents, all your Outlook 365 email, it's all there in Microsoft Graph for you. So every user has their own Microsoft Graph, right? So the AI Copilot for M365 goes to the graph, figures out the response, takes that response and goes back to the language model and says, hey, give me a cohesive answer,
Hmm.
does some final checks. So the M365 Copilot has some interesting things built around making some guardrails around making sure that the answer is grounded.
Yeah.
It's not hallucinating. So it's tried to minimize the hallucination, ensure that the answer is from the Microsoft Graph itself, and the answer is something which does not contain, it's something which is professional in nature. The response is professional. So Microsoft has created Copilot. It's an example of an agent. There are a lot of other agentic
Yeah.
frameworks which you can pick up from the market and start doing agents. A couple of them, Crew AI is the most popular one, where you can, if you know a little bit of Python, extremely easy to build powerful agents. There is even a marketplace for
Hmm.
agents where you can do agents visually. So Mind OS is one of the marketplaces where you can drag and drop your way and create agents. And there are people who have created agents, and you can add your agents to the marketplace and allow other people to use those
Very
agents.
interesting.
You can keep your agents for free, or even you can charge for your agents.
Okay.
So this is really an exciting space because it takes the capabilities of LLMs to the next
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing with AI, right? When we start talking, and like with every topic or every word, like that becomes a discussion by itself, right? Like, I definitely want to go over some important topics. Like, one was hallucination, and like what should be the guardrails around it, just to make sure your results or your clients' expectations are not like way off the mark, right? But I think we should park that for a different discussion. And what I'm expecting is maybe this could be the first of the series. Maybe we could deep dive into more of the topics, like, on like, and even discuss a little bit about your book as well. Now, like getting on to a concluding topic. So, like, as of now, let's say, even in your experience in different enterprises, like, what do you think, like, companies are looking to AI to solve for? And what is the most pressing problems that like enterprises are looking for towards AI, that like they would be able to automate away, or like, scale it further?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I would say yes, enterprises are excited, but at the same time they're also very
Hmm.
cautious, right? So they're taking optimistic approach that yes, long term AI is going to help improve productivity, gain more automation, create efficiencies, etc. But they're taking a very cautious approach. So they are mostly looking at internal use cases, or most of the people I've spoken to, they're doing experimentation around internal use cases, so especially around summarizing documents.
Hmm.
That's a very common use case. Searching across vast reams of knowledge bases, right? So think about a large enterprise, just the HR department, amount of questions which can come in,
Yeah.
right? So what if you could do all this self-service, right? What if you could easily allow people to find answers to the questions exactly from the knowledge bases? Let's say by, for example, using a chatbot interface, right? So a lot of internal knowledge retrieval um, could be done using generative AI and interfaces like
Hmm.
chatbots. And the second thing is summarizing. So because the information is in multiple places, so it could be in documents, emails, Confluence pages,
Yeah.
Jira. How do you then synthesize? How do you connect the dots across these and then bring a cohesive answer back? And that's not very
Yeah.
easy. It does not come out of the box because every product for Microsoft Copilot will only focus on M365. It doesn't have access to anything
Yeah.
else, right? But enterprises have a plethora of systems. How do you connect the dots between between all these systems and then get something out of that, right? Then how do you plug in your own data, internal data to begin with, or maybe customer and payments data? I don't think so. Some enterprises are experimenting with these things, but I don't think without a proper governance framework, anything can see the light of production,
Hmm.
right?
Interesting.
Because there will always be questions around, okay, can you trust the output
Yeah.
of these?
Yeah.
So one has to be careful, especially when don't expect the large language models to give you math,
Yeah.
right? They are not trained for giving you calculations. So, for example, don't expect them to fiddle with numbers and come up with numbers for you. Don't expect the responses to be 100% accurate all the time. So then have human in the loop
Hmm.
always, right? That's why they're called assistants. That's why they're called co-pilots, because they are working with
Yeah.
humans, right? So you have to understand it's humans plus AI. It's not AI versus humans.
Interesting. Okay, this is actually very interesting, and I believe like at some level, this is where even the opportunity is there for like even startups who are for like fiddling in AI, right? Like Microsoft, as you mentioned, might be limited to Office 365 and so on, right? But when it comes to like enterprises, especially if they're using different technologies or different platforms, if you could build a system which could connect across all these platforms and gather the data, make sense of it, I believe if someone could even build a strong solution out there which is solving for this, I believe that would be something like which most of the enterprises would be running after. That's what I.
Yes, no, no. So don't get me wrong. Microsoft Copilot has capability to connect to
Ah,
other
I see.
systems as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have built copilots which are extensible.
Hmm.
So you can write connectors and you can have copilots connect to
I
these
see. Okay.
connectors.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. So
yeah.
maybe
So they
okay.
have something called as Copilot Studio where you can create your own copilots, custom
Yeah.
copilots. So Microsoft is all in. They've got products for specific verticals. They've also got the ability where you can extend those products in the enterprise. And for an enterprise, if they're using the Microsoft stack, it makes sense to go with the vendor for a fee. Again, the cost needs to be taken into account because all the new features from Microsoft come with a license fee. But if you're doing this on your own, then of course you can use code.
Yeah.
You can use Python or you can use JavaScript, and then you can use some of the open source models, some of the newer models which are smaller and they reason very well, or they do one or two things very well. And if that is the use case that you're trying to
Makes sense.
solve,
Okay.
then maybe that, or you could use a hybrid
Yeah.
combination. Right?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
I want to show you something,
Yeah.
Jitin, which is very very new. Let me just share my screen and just we can
Sure.
we can we can close with that. Let me know when you can see it. So Grok is this
Hmm.
new engine for inferencing large language models. Okay, so it's not a language model per se. Okay, it is a LPU or a language processing
Yeah.
unit. So it's a new piece of hardware in which you can host language models, and it runs extremely fast. So
Okay.
this is Grok demo, and they have made Llama and Mistral available.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to use Mistral 8 into 7B, right, and just give it a prompt, right? Use cases of generative AI in enterprises. Just check out the speed.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is like
Yeah.
528 tokens per second, as opposed to GPT-4, which will be around 20 or 30
Yeah.
tokens per second. So I think advances like these, right? It's gonna make AI really really powerful in the
Makes sense.
future.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. So, like, one topic that I want to hop onto is the book. Okay. Like, how much time did you spend writing this book?
okay, one is so
6 to 8 months.
six
That's
to
a
eight
long
months to
time.
get the
Okay.
book out.
Understood.
Yes, and I also had data science and AI graduates helping
Hmm.
me. So I had three of my um, AI graduates who interned with me
Hmm.
earlier on some project work. They worked with me. They helped compile and synthesize at least half of the book, and help me review the book,
Hmm.
help me review the
Yeah.
manuscript, do the grammarly checks. So it was a team effort. I mentioned them as
Hmm.
co-authors inside the book.
Interesting.
So we were four of us, you can say.
Okay.
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun. Writing book is not an easy
Yeah.
feat. There are a lot of things which go in writing a book, and I know a lot of choices to be made in terms of the size of the
Yeah.
book, the paper, the
Well,
font,
which was your favorite
the
topic? Like,
printing.
or which topic was you ended up spending like a lot of time?
So I think all the enterprise
Mm,
topics, future trends, the enterprise, how humans and professionals should adapt
mm,
in the age of AI. So I think I spend a lot of business use cases. I spend a lot of time in that particular
mm,
section,
yeah.
and I think the other sections, the fundamentals of language modeling, prompt engineering. There's a small section on programming, a couple of chapters on
Yeah.
programming as well. So I highly recommend people to sort of check out this
Yeah.
book. It's available on Amazon,
We'll
and
put
it
the
will
link
just give
in
you
the
a broad.
description. We'll put the link in the description and even some of the other
Thank you.
like materials that you mentioned, right? So that our folks could like reach out to
Yeah,
that. All right. Okay.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it has a chapter on agents. It has a chapter on
Uh-huh.
tools, so you can just at least you're aware of all these things which
Makes
exist.
sense.
So please check it
Makes
out.
sense. Makes sense. Okay. And I guess as we mentioned earlier, right? Like this may be the first of the one. Like maybe we could have more discussions because like that's the thing with AI, right? Like, each and every topic is interesting and it takes a life of its own. So on that note, let's conclude. Like any closing thoughts, Altaf, like for audience before we wrap up.
No, so I think AI is here, and with generative AI, you must be aware of what it is, how this technology works, get a high level understanding, and then try to figure out how it's going to impact your day to day work and how you should be positioning yourself, your brand, your startup, or even your professional career in the age of AI. It's very, very important for us to understand this and know really how to apply this in our day to day and what we as humans should be really good at. So, in terms of your career positioning, I think it's an important skill to have in today's
Perfect.
age.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So thank you so much, Altaf. Like I look forward to seeing you again on like one of these topics again. Yeah, on that note, thank you everyone. Like if you have any questions, you could like ask us directly in the comments below and we would be sharing all the details in the description. So look forward to that. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank you, Jitin, for having
Yeah,
me.
no
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.